Palo Alto studio connecting Silicon Valley and Wall Street.
I'm John Burns, coaching the CUBE here with Dave Vellante, my co-host. Everybody, welcome to theCUBE's NYSE Wired studio here at the Buttonwood Podium, high above the New York Stock Exchange Options Exchange. My name is Dave Vellante, and this is our AI Factory series. And we were this week at the AWS NYC Summit, and I had the pleasure of cajoling a couple of top analysts here to join me to talk about AI factories, to talk about what we learned in the hyperscale market generally and AWS specifically this week. Sid Nag is back. He's the Chief Research Officer at Tekonyx. Sid, good to see you. It's quite the title. It's you got promoted.
Glad to be back. Yeah. Exactly. Life's been good.
And of course, CUBE alum Corey Quinn is here. He's the Chief Cloud Economist at Duckbill. It used to be the Duckbill Group. You changed name now to just Duckbill.
We raised around. We're building software now, and when you say group, it sounds consulty and folksy and not at all fundable. So here we are.
No kidding. You raised around.
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations. I missed that news. That's fantastic. But hopefully you're still like in control and
not fundable.
Oh yes. Yeah. Oh yes.
Not fundable yet fungible.
Yeah. Well, obviously it's fundable.
Don't say that. Yeah, exactly.
All right. So AI factories. What is it? Is it real? Is it a buzzword? Is it just marketing, or is there substance underneath?
Depends entirely on who says it and what they're trying to sell today. At some point, the idea of AI, building AI and building software that just automatically builds more software to do what all software currently does, which is sell more AI.
Okay, well, so...
It's an Ouroboros, but a very expensive.
All right, but Sid, I mean, clearly compute is evolving, right? The network obviously evolved. And last year, last March at GTC, NVIDIA went deeper down at the stack with STX, which is sort of, they get storage into the game now. Of course, building agents on top. Is this a new architecture, and what does that mean for the future of computing?
Well, I think network, first of all, is becoming sexy again. So that's the new phrase. So network is the computer in many ways.
Scott McNeely said.
The whole Scott McNeely thing, right?
He said I should have called it cloud.
Yeah, I should have called it cloud.
Put the dot in .com.
But you know, honestly, compute has evolved so much with the world of AI. Like just talking about before the show started, you know, there's so many different processing units.
What did you call it?
I call
hybrid processing units?
It's a logical thing. It's a hybrid processing unit. It's not a physical thing you touch, like a GPU or a CPU or a LPU or NPU or TPU. It's a logical thing. It's a hybrid processing environment because, as we heard at the Amazon conference this week, but also something that I've been talking about for a while, is that an AI workload has many different facets, and each facet is serviced best by the right processing unit, right? It could be CPU for certain things, could be a GPU for other things, and so on and so forth. I mean, your iPhone has an NPU built in there, right? It has all sorts of agentic functionality that's being built in, AI functionality with Siri and things of that nature. So we're experiencing a very interesting time where compute is becoming very hybrid in that nature. And so the AI factory to me is a logical entity that helps end users. I don't care what all the vendors hype about building $500 billion data centers. The end users have to find a way to use AI in a pedestrian fashion, and that is essentially how do I take curated data? How do I take all these different multimodal and multimodal LLMs? How do I take all the orchestration engines? How do I take all the compute fabric and all the other software tools that spits out what you call systems of intelligence, right? Is that term you use?
System of intelligence. It's not my term. It's Jeffrey Moore's.
Okay, so I call it scalable intelligence, right? And that is something a CIO can take and action their individual constituents, be it business, IT, supply chain, procurement, R&D, marketing, research, whatever. To me, that's a successful.
So I want to go up the stack in this conversation. But Corey, I'll ask you. So you built a great company and a career on helping customers,
understand their cloud bills.
Yeah,
and now we're doing a lot of it with inference too. Same story. It's the most portable cloud workload we've ever seen is inference. It is effectively the same thing from multiple providers. So it comes down to performance, latency, and better commercials.
and token costs, right?
Exactly. That's where the better commercials come into play.
Okay, so I want to ask you. So there's this debate going on in the industry is, oh, you have to do this on prem
Yep.
because you can't you can generate your own tokens. You don't want to buy them through an API, but of course you can be a token generator in the cloud.
You can.
How do you see that all sort of playing out in the customer base today?
I think that it's becoming rapidly commoditized. The question then becomes one of economics. Do you have the wherewithal, real estate, capacity, these days, ability to get NVIDIA GPUs in the door, power these things, run them responsibly? Then it's a pure mathematics question. Whereas, and it also depends, of course, what model you're going to run locally. Frontier models are not open weight, so you're going to have to make your peace with whatever it is we're doing inference on. It's going to be this specific kind of model. Whereas if you're chasing the frontier, they drop a new thing. It's available through Bedrock within hours, and okay, I guess we're going to go use it there now.
So
But that'll slow.
I want to stay on this idea. So okay, so take the neoclouds. Somebody put out a tweet the other day that you shared with me that they were basically they likened it to some kind of .com, or
Publish.
or, yeah,
Yeah.
The market is definitely bubblicious, but the premise of the neoclouds, like a CoreWeave, is we can do AI better than the hyperscalers because they have to quote unquote bolt on AI onto their general purpose clouds. What do you say to that?
I think you can build a data center extremely quickly if you think about it being only single purpose. Well, I don't need to worry about redundant power. It's not going to store anything long term. So the data stuff we can cheap out on. We can skip the fire insurance payments and skimp on the cooling. But there's going to be reliability issues. There's durability issues, and in the fullness of time, these things are not going to be constrained forever. Companies would not be dealing with the neoclouds if their existing provider, whoever that may be, had sufficient capacity for them. So the question is what happens? Do the neoclouds grow up into something that is more robust, more sustainable in different ways before the capacity constraints ease? Or do they not, and suddenly everyone just starts to bring all of their inference back into whatever provider they're on, maybe on-prem, and they die a quiet death of not being needed anymore?
So the likelihood is probably a combination of that, Sid. I mean, so to Corey's point, what happens when supply and demand come in balance? What does a neocloud or an AI cloud have to do to survive?
Well, I think what Corey said is spot on, but there's another element to neoclouds that one is missing, I think, right? The whole value proposition of neoclouds is 90% compute capacity utilization, right? At a commoditized rate, and if the hyperscaler can't meet my demand, then I go to the neoclouds. But I'm reminded of the days where there were companies that were doing exchanges, right, connecting different environments through a central exchange like an Equinix or whoever, and that business got commoditized really fast, right? So I still remember our advice to them was to up level the game, provide value add services on top of that commodity business. So my question with the advent of neoclouds is, what is CoreWeave and their peers, what are they going to do to elevate their value proposition? Because if they're just selling rental compute capacity or GPUs, that's not a sustainable business.
And then it commoditizes, becomes a price war, and good luck outbidding Amazon.
Exactly, yeah.
But people used to say that about Amazon, that it was the infrastructure was going to get commoditized. This is a company that has, 38% operating margin.
I think Amazon's a great example.
Yeah.
They took the whole EC2, S3, all the basic IaaS business and up-leveled it to platform as a service capabilities and other capabilities on top of that. And now with the advent of AI, they're driving the pull-through of IaaS through all these value-added services. So that's what the neoclouds have to do.
How much of Amazon's revenue do you think is EC2? Less than half. Let's
AWS's revenue?
Yeah, AWS.
Last time I ran the numbers was right about half. So, then there's a question of, all right, well, other things run on top of EC2. Is that qualified as EC2 revenue? Probably not. They don't break out numbers for this, and they call everything these days an AI service. So who knows?
But my point is, it's a contributor. I believe it's a contributor to profit.
Yeah,
I don't think they're giving away EC2 in order to make margins.
I don't think that's what we're saying.
Up the stack.
I'm saying that Amazon's not selling EC2 as a standalone product anymore. There's a lot of pull-through coming of EC2 through other value-added services they built.
Like Snowflake.
That's whatever.
Yeah,
But-
no, I mean,
so,
Or their own
So-
Kubernetes
example.
offering, it brings
Exactly.
along that for the
Yes,
ride.
exactly.
Yeah.
All the microservices, all that. So what is NeoCloud's answer to that? I don't
Well,
see an answer yet.
presumably they have to build out beyond compute, storage, networking, other services, and help ISVs build software on top of it.
Remember the early days of the cloud, and people were highly skeptical of it because we have our own data centers, and even though they tend to lose power 3 times a week, and the security guard leaves the door open when he has a little too much to drink in the mornings, great. That's okay. You own the base, rent the peak for the peaks and valleys from cloud. And over time, it became, why are you running your own data centers again? And companies still do, but someone launching today likely is not going to go down that path the way that it once was the only option.
Yep.
These days, born in the cloud is a very common story of successful companies.
Well, Dell Tech World recently talked about it has many thousands. I want to say the numbers was north of 3,000, what they call AI factory customers in the enterprise. Now, most of that or much of that is going to guys like CoreWeave. Most of the stuff that's going to the enterprises is air cooled, right? So they're not doing the latest and greatest, Grace Blackwell, and they won't be doing Vera Rubin in mainstream enterprises, at least not for a while. There is an argument that says that accelerated computing is a new form of computing. CUDA is the new sort of developer stack, and that the entire general purpose stack over in the fullness of time, to use a phrase that we like to use, will be absorbed into the AI factory, model. Compute, storage, networking, offloads, and that ISVs are going to ultimately have to write to this new accelerated computing stack, or they'll become irrelevant. What do you guys think about that?
I think that's an awfully lofty term to describe the grim reality of today, where a stupendous amount of the software we have is more or less just gluing APIs together, maybe with some data enrichment as well. There's no such thing as an agentic CPU, as Tobias Mann said, and I echo the sentiment, where there's so much of what we're doing on a computer that is not inference-based. I mean, theoretically, could you make everything inference-based? Yeah, like, all right, every day at 5 o'clock, I want to rotate the log files. Well, okay, instead of doing that now, I want you to think about rotating the log files first, and 90% of the time you will, and 10% of the time maybe you'll decide not to. That starts to get very non-deterministic, very weird, but also kind of wasteful. It's not necessary in those same ways.
So you would agree that so what happens to the general purpose computing, the whole trillions of dollars of x86 infrastructure and software that's out there? It just continues to get innovated, doesn't get innovated away? What do you see happening there?
Well, I think you mentioned ISVs, right? It's going to be interesting what the role of the ISV is going to be going forward. I think that's what we should be talking about.
Well, let's talk about it.
Because when you think of, we just came out of the Amazon conference, when you look at things like Agent Core or even Quick, which has capabilities to spin up agents and applications and APIs in real time, right? That's going to be the new world of app development. That's going to be something the ISV should be seriously worried about, right? Now, that's of course going to drive a ton of compute power that is going to be necessary. And again, that compute power is going to be highly distributed, right? It's not going to be centralized.
Okay, and I do want to go up the stack. I promise I will, but I want to stay in this for a minute. So when we went from on-prem software to SaaS, everything changed.
Yes.
The technology model, the operating model, the pricing model, everything changed, largely within IT. And the same thing seems to be happening again, right? The pricing model is going to change. The seat-based model.
Several times in a month, yes.
Right, several times in a month. Tokens now, you think, okay. And so more CapEx. I would think IT spending, tech spending is going to increase dramatically, or else this AI thing is just BS. On average, 4% of companies' revenues are spent on IT, on technology. That's going to explode, and it's going to be through tokens and presumably driving productivity. If you buy that,
I don't buy it.
then
Go ahead.
okay, but that is the premise, and that as a result, all the software stack is going to change. You say no,
Because I don't think enterprises have unlimited budgets. First of all, I mean, we're already talking about FinOps or tokenomics in the world of AI.
so Salesforce would be in great shape then. Workday, Salesforce, SAP, ServiceNow, they're good. The
Yeah.
market's got it wrong, in your opinion,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Why? Because these are so if you think about the enterprise, the enterprise systems are based on applications that are deterministic, like the ones you rattled off, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Now here comes a agentic, or the world of agents, that's highly probabilistic, right? To marry the two together and make it work is not going to be that simple, right? And there are elements associated with, which I'm sure Corey can add to this, the whole economic pro- prediction, right? People are focused on agents being doing tasks correctly, but they're not focused on agents doing tasks correctly at what cost. You think that's going to not be a worry of the CFO tomorrow? Of course, they're going to be worried.
Depends on the value that they're
mean,
generating.
Depends on the
If
continuing
yeah,
rise of
yeah,
this as well. And in the fullness of time, because, all right, I used to have to go out to the mainframe because my local dumb terminal had nothing on it in terms of capacity whatsoever. At some point, they're going to start making chips specifically tuned for inference. Local models are going to get good enough. Maybe it's not going to re-architect your entire application, but a local call to basically write a fancy for loop and rename all these files for me is well within the grasp.
You're saying
of
at the
reality.
edge.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
And that
I
becomes
agree with
free
that.
except for the cost of power to run your laptop.
not
to do
just
that.
the edge, but also on premises, right? If I'm Bank of America or if I'm Goldman Sachs, I want to build a small language model that's applicable to my domain, right? So that could be a derivative of, or could be curated from a frontier model, but then I create that SLM and I ingest my company specific data that a frontier model can never scrape because it's sitting on legacy CMDBs and databases of records and all of that. And now I've got a very customized model that I don't need a H100 to run on at the price of a Honda Civic, right? It's going to be a very different economic model that's going to emerge with the advent of these company specific, enterprise specific small language models. That's where the industry's going.
Okay, but
They talked about that
H100.
for coding, and they looked into it, but you don't hear about that anymore. Where we take our general purpose coding assistant and then we train it on your company's code base,
Bingo,
which is a
bingo.
way of saying we're going to take this smart robot and then give it a traumatic brain injury. And surprise, surprise, it didn't go so well for the companies that tried that. And now the general purpose coding models are superior than those custom trained on your code base things with just a bit of steering.
So I want to go deeper in the stack before we go up again.
Of
I want to talk
course.
about silicon. So things like Nitro, Graviton, secret weapon for AWS for a number of years. They really had a great lead on the rest of the market. But they were competing essentially with a flattening out x86
Yes.
curve, and Intel was shooting itself in the foot. Now the game has changed. NVIDIA is setting the cadence of the industry.
Yes.
They're on a, let's call it a 1 year, extreme co-design, 10x, every year. Maybe you stretch that out a little bit, but nonetheless, they're breaking kind of historical boundaries in terms of price performance.
That's back into the laws of physics and supply chains. Yeah.
Which, right, they've got to manage that, and they're locking up supply chains, doing what they have to do to achieve that. My question is, how do you guys see, how would you stack rank the hyperscalers in terms of their ability? Let's start with AWS, because you had Nitro, Graviton, ARM-based processors, home run. Trainium, Inferentia, which no longer has an R&D roadmap, but it's being supported. But you wrote about this the other day. I said, Inferentia's dead. You said, well, not quite dead, but what's the status of the silicon efforts inside of AWS? How would you stack rank that?
But the three majors, I would say that you have Amazon, who is right now the front runner on this. Google is doing amazing things with their TPUs, but they would be a much more serious contender if they weren't continually getting distracted by whatever shiny thing moves the moment. That has always been the Google problem. They don't stay the course on anything. Microsoft is. They say interesting things. I enjoyed my time at Build. They're doing some neat stuff, but they are an absolute shambles. It was reported today that GitHub is now moving to AWS for some stuff because Azure keeps falling over. They said nicer things about it in the service of AI. Terrific, great. If GitHub goes down anymore, they're going to write another copy of a business book, 4-Hour Work Week, to describe it. They can't keep the service up.
All right, so you would put
Under crushing demand, to be fair.
And Amazon was the first to really, I think it was the first to develop its own silicon. I mean, TPUs were in there too. I mean, to Google's credit, they've got probably more H100 capacity than anybody, but that's fine. That's maybe a nice advantage. But I would agree. I think Amazon's got some experience there, and they can leverage that. Can they use this Graviton playbook vis-a-vis NVIDIA? That's kind of the big question because they're competing.
I don't think it's
against
stack
them.
rank. I don't think it's
yeah.
a matter of stack ranking because everyone's doing it differently, right? Amazon's not going to take, hasn't showed any interest in taking Inferentia and Trainium and making it commercially available for others to use.
I don't
right?
buy that though. I just don't see Google succeeding at that. I mean, they're going to use it for their own internal.
Well,
capabilities.
Google is working with Meta to.
I know,
Meta's
but
using
I mean-
TPUs, right? Amazon's not doing that.
But to what end? Are they going to become a merchant silicon vendor? Really? I mean,
we
do
don't
you think
know.
that's
We
gonna-
don't know.
I'd be surprised if that's the case.
we don't-
Maybe they see they need to get the volume, and Broadcom has volume. So and
I mean,
Mike-
I think compute is going to be so multifaceted that you can't make a comment like that today. You don't know what's going to be
because there's going to be so much demand
yeah, in different
a variety of
directions, right?
workloads.
Let's not conflate ARM with GPUs. GPUs have their own unique architectures on a per manufacturer basis by and large. Graviton is an ARM chip. It is built on the ARM standard. You can compile the same software and run the binary on a Graviton instance as a Raspberry Pi sitting in my sewing room.
Yep.
Why I have one of those when I don't sew, we don't know. But it is the same thing. You can get that architecture anywhere. If you build for an NVIDIA GPU, that is basically what you're doing without a fair bit of reconfiguration.
That's precisely right. I mean, Inferentia is not doing large matrix multiplication as NVIDIA GPU is doing. They're very different needs, right? You can't really stack.
Right,
that.
and Trainium.
Yeah.
Trainium is a great inference chip,
Yeah, exactly.
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Surprise!
That's
Amazon was
surprise.
bad at naming something.
Yeah. So
well, they had a training chip and
there are
an
technology
inference
issues, there are commercial issues, there are positioning issues. So stack ranking is not a
That's something we do in the
game.
cube, but
Yeah,
in
yeah.
Microsoft, well behind. Okay,
Microsoft's Maya, right? We don't know what Microsoft's doing Maya. They haven't told much about it. To
maybe use it for internal
Yeah,
stuff, but
yeah.
they,
Thing is,
they
they've
were-
been
they
dead
were late to
before
that
many
game.
times, and somehow they're still here in a front runner.
Well, they got good cash machine.
Yes, they
Okay, let's move up the stack a little bit because the thing that I learned this week at AWS is they're serious about a work surface with Quick. It looks like they've got that right, and they've got a back end what we call system of intelligence. They're working on that. That's AWS Context, I think they call it. And there's other pieces in there. Agent Core has capabilities. There's governance. Their governance seems to still be distributed, and they seem comfortable with that. We'll let the ecosystem do whatever governance, and we'll keep it in Glue and SageMaker or whatever tooling we have there. They don't seem to be wanting to pull that together into an abstraction, which I don't.
or they're incapable of doing it effectively.
maybe
It's-
Qu-
they-
maybe
moving
maybe
up the stack has always been perilous. for
maybe
Amazon.
Quick can help. Well, they would argue Connect is
is the single breakout success that they've seen.
that proves the rule, I guess. But nonetheless, you have this interesting battle going on. You've got the hyperscalers, AWS, now in the mix. Clearly, Google had shown its hand before. Microsoft is there. You went to Build. They showed some pretty interesting.
They really
things at
did.
Build. You've got the SaaS vendors that you say are fine because they got determinism. So it's true. Salesforce with their data cloud, their cloud data 360, I think they call it now.
Can't keep up with the names.
Right? Palantir has got the best ontology. ServiceNow has designs. They want to participate in that, no doubt. SAP's got great data models, so they're in the mix.
And don't forget the model builder.
And then exactly, that's the third. You got the model builders. You also have Snowflake and Databricks now participating both in that end user surface with both for developers and for business users.
And don't forget the Wall Street bros like the
What do you mean? The
like
Careful, they can hear
Blackstone.
us.
yeah, the
Like the Blackstones
PE
and
companies.
Apollos getting into the AI
PE companies.
business.
Okay, so are we destined for silos of intelligence? I'll call it more fragmentation in the tech business.
I think so. I think
History would suggest that, wouldn't it?
yeah. I mean, I do think, however, that all of these things are going to converge at some point, right? Because these things, at the end of the day, where are people going to make money out of all of this from the end users, right? And end users don't want a ton of technology being thrown at them. That's why things like AI factories matter. That's why things like systems of intelligence matter, right? So show me a pathway where whatever Amazon is doing with Quick, I think Quick's an amazing tool. I didn't realize how powerful it was, but I see for the first time, Amazon has done something interesting in this industry, uh, in bringing all their different capabilities together into a single work surface. I call it some people call it the enterprise operating system, right? Is that, are you going to wake up in the morning and instead of seeing a window screen, are you going to see a quick screen? That day may arrive.
Well, that's the
right?
intent, right? I
That
mean,
day may arrive, and others are going to follow, right? I mean, Google's not going to sit back, and they're going to try to do something similar with Gemini Enterprise and so on and so forth. So I think that's really where the battle is going to be fought, in my opinion.
so there's a school of thought. Some say the LLM vendors are going to own that because they don't have to make money yet, and they've got access to compute. Others say no, they're never going to be able to write that deterministic
Well, the
software.
LLM vendors can build a work surface that
Well, they are doing
is
that.
available on your laptop. Then of course they can do it.
No,
They
no.
haven't shown any propensity to do that yet.
Well,
right?
what's Claude Cowork and Codex from OpenAI? That's
But
a work
very,
surface.
that's a very atomic function. It's not an all-encompassing function. Quick can build. I mean,
Well,
that
it is if you
paradigm
hook
can
it up,
build
yeah.
pathways into a Salesforce.
But what
It is if you
or
hook it up to all
Amazon.
these things and violate your company's security policy. The nice thing about Quick is that presumably it works with the way that your data
Yeah, exactly.
controls.
And-
It's a window to the world,
and
essentially,
to
right?
quote,
And I'm not saying Amazon's the only company that's going to do it.
No,
Everyone's going
no.
to follow.
but to quote George Gilbert, there are more user work surfaces agents than there are fleas on a camel's back,
Yeah.
right? And so they're not all going to survive. What impressed me about what I saw at AWS is they've got that back end system of intelligence that is emerging, and it looks like it's a combination of what AWS context is what they call
I
it.
think that's what I call it, yeah.
I want it to work, but I am so highly skeptical given that it seems that Amazonians I've talked to for a decade now seem incapable of talking to other Amazonians. The left hand doesn't know what the right
They
hand
have
is
to in
doing,
order
it
to
never
make that
has.
work. You're right.
If they can't solve that, then the rest of it's for naught.
Well, this is, I mean, I can't remember.
Yeah, I think
It's been
he
12
makes a good point because, I was impressed with Quick. Then I saw the Agent Core demo. I was impressed with that. But that's like divergent paths.
It's like you two should talk.
Wow,
Yeah.
what the hell? And then I go see a contact center demo. It's called Connect. Connect has no connected tissue, sorry for the bad pun, with Quick, right? So why is a contact center agent not using Quick? Why is he using Connect, right?
Well, and then you've got
So
you've got
these are the problems that have to be solved
got
at some
S3
point. And they're all
tables.
based on
so you got
agentic and AI.
you got S3
Yeah.
tables
Yeah.
that has some value there. You've got, as you mentioned, Agent Core.
Yeah.
There's the SageMaker sort of piece, which is, and there's Glue.
Yeah.
That catalog. You've got now Quick. You've got not called Elasticsearch anymore. It's OpenSearch, right?
This is
And then-
fantastic. If I want an ETL type pipeline that I have to go build from parts at Home Depot, that's
So-
the problem. They haven't put it
but
together
they've the
cohesively
tech
yet.
is all there.
Yeah.
And so
Maybe Claude Code can put it together for
and
me.
they've got the knowledge graph in context.
Yeah.
Right.
In
AWS
Quick
context.
too. In Quick, it's
And they've-
amazing. It's powerful. Yeah, the knowledge.
Is it the same knowledge graph?
No, it's
in
different.
Quick
That's the thing.
and
That's a different. That's
context?
That's
Are they different knowledge graphs? Are you sure?
Of
course it is.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well, they got to get
I
that all
went into
together.
the weeds. I didn't sit through a slideshow. I went into the demo. I went into the weeds. They're all different. That's a problem. So
Well, so that's
also
the
their fourth or fifth bite at the apple. They've been saying for 3 or 4 years now they're great at AI. This is the first time that actually is credible with what they've built in Quick Desktop. But it's like, yeah, Lucy has yanked that football away enough times that I'm a little skeptical at taking a kick at it.
Well,
Other people are
but in
too.
Agent Core, we heard the growth of Agent Core. Swami gave some stats today, so it's obvious getting absorbed. I talked to customers who love it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, but this has always been Amazon's greatest strength and its greatest weakness. Jassy years ago said, "Look, we like to be at the primitive level because when the market changes, we can change with it.
Yeah.
But after a point in time, it gets too complicated." And Microsoft is the other end of the spectrum. Like somebody said, it's a black box, that doesn't always work.
What's the box made out of? SKUs.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
75 or more now called Copilot.
Okay, so we're at the halfway mark of 2026. What surprised you this year, and what are you looking for in the second half?
I would say that I did not expect the Model Labs to go for IPO as quickly as they have. And I would have thought that by the time you are basically hovering around $1 trillion in valuation, you would have gotten a little bit better at managing your comms and your messaging and not the story being about what you're building, not about the drama that swirls around you like a miasma everywhere that you go. That has surprised me. I'm looking forward to increased capabilities across the board from the AI space. The things we're talking about now, if we play this back a year from now, it's going to sound hopelessly out of date, sophomoric, because the world has changed. Heck, between now and the time we publish it, that might be the case. That'll be several hours potentially. And it is constantly changing. So what I am excited about is that there is value here. Companies are finally caring about what it costs rather than saying we care about costs while their engineering team has a money incineration tournament leaderboard going on. Those two cannot coexist. So we're starting to see, okay, where is the value coming from here? And we're getting answers to that because it's clearly not nothing. And it's also clear that we're not going to summon God via JSON anytime soon. The answer is somewhere in between, and figuring out the exact location of that on a per company and a per workload basis is really what the second half of this year is about.
Yeah, that's great analysis. I mean, this is going to take the better part of a decade to play out and to show that AI can be self-funding and live up to some of its promises. What are your thoughts on what surprised you?
What surprised me is the rapid adoption of agentic. I didn't expect it to be that pervasive and that soon. So that's definitely a surprise. It was also, the other thing that surprised me is a lack of understanding by the AI vendors in terms of the ability for people to pay for what they're building. I still think they haven't figured it out. They think they can just spend billions and trillions of dollars building GPU and TPU and silicon farms, and somebody's going to come and have enough applications and enough workloads to consume power out of those, compute power out of those farms. I still think there's a massive divide and the chasm that has to be crossed between what the vendors are doing and what the enterprises are looking for, right? And that is just mind-boggling. I don't get it. Like, aren't they talking to each other?
I mean, the
Every
continued
developer's not going to drop 20 grand a month on inference tokens, but that's sort of looking like what's needed to achieve some of these
But I mean,
valuations.
you've
What
got,
is- what is missing?
but you've got,
Does it take an analyst to go and bridge that gap?
you've got Sundar, you got Andy Jassy, you got Satya, right? You got, well, NVIDIA making money off of all this, so that's, but these are smart people. They've seen companies get crushed in the past by just making really bad decisions, and this capex. I mean, if they're wrong, this is a disaster for
Well,
these guys.
there's a dark horse in this conversation,
Oracle's the other one,
which
Larry.
is maybe they're thinking that enterprises are never going to consume that amount of AI ecosystem things, whether it's workloads, applications, and maybe the focus should be on the government sector, and that's where all the money is going to be spent.
Well, that did a lot of things surprised me about that.
So
I'm gonna have to stop there.
That's a topic for another day.
Mythos was a bit of a surprise, the government's active role, and
Yes.
I mean, look at Palantir, great example. Where are they making most of their money?
yeah, government,
Public sector.
yeah, government and forward deployed engineers, but obviously there's some powerful technology there. So what I'm looking for in the second half is Palantir for all. You know, that actually is, you can roll out on a horizontal basis without $1 million a year forward deployed engineer in my shop. That's
right.
what I would hope to see. Guys,
We have forward deployed engineers at home. Yeah.
great, exactly, that's right. Well, Corey and Sid, thank you so much for spending some time coming down to the exchange and
Pleasure.
hanging out with theCUBE. It's great to have you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks, Dave.
All right, and thank you for watching. This is Dave Vellante for theCUBE NYSE Wired. We'll see you next time.